Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for tuning in to the second edition of The Block Live. I'm your host, Frank Chaparro, Director of News at The Block. We have a very exciting episode for you folks today. Thanks for tuning in the midst of what is, at least from my perspective, one of the most exciting weeks in the cryptocurrency market for quite some time. We've run up above 13,000. And of course, everybody knows, unless you've been under a rock, that PayPal officially announced that it's diving into the market. Before we jump into that, we're going to bring on Ryan Todd later on in the episode. But before we do that, I want to take a very important moment to thank our sponsor, eToro. The Block Live is brought to you by eToro, and our US viewers can enjoy a free $25 account credit after making their first trade of $100 on eToro today. Click the link in our Twitter feed to sign up today. So let's dive into this PayPal news. It's really significant and kind of happening in the midst of this really bullish price action. And you could probably argue that the trip over 13,000 was to a degree connected to this significant news. And the crux of it is that crypto will be offered on PayPal, and then in 2021, they will extend that to Venmo, obviously the very popular social payments app that they acquired. And what's interesting here is that they're doing this through a partnership. So they're not sort of going alone. They've got Paxos on the back end providing liquidity and also regulatory support. So the way that PayPal's offering this service is through a conditional license with New York Department of Financial Services, which they are able to do through Paxos. In 2021, and what I think is really interesting is the fact that users of PayPal will be able to spend their crypto across their network of 21 million or more than 20 million merchants. And so covering the space for, since the 2017 run up, that's been one of the big questions about crypto and the viability of it is why or how will these digital assets be accepted at various merchants. And it was funny, I was talking to someone the other day about, in my early coverage, I remember Morgan Stanley came out with this report about how the number of merchants accepting crypto was actually in decline. And a lot of merchants, just couldn't really, get through the management of these coins, the price volatility, and from their perspective, it just didn't make sense for them to accept it. With PayPal here sitting as this intermediary, it will definitely lift the load for a lot of these players and potentially increase the usage of different cryptocurrencies. If people actually want to spend their digital assets. And that obviously remains to be seen. But to talk about the significance of this and to unpack it, we have my not only dear colleague, but dear friend, a payments fintech expert in his own respect, former Deutsche Bank payment analyst, Ryan Todd. Ryan, we have been looking at this story for the better part of 6 months, thinking about what PayPal could be doing in this market. Originally, we thought maybe it was just Bitcoin. There's been other rumors about them potentially launching their own stable coin. What we have right now is a fairly simple buy, sell feature and hold feature, which kind of honestly looks a little like what Robinhood rolled out back in 2018. So kind of gave a lay of the land. What's your initial thoughts around this news?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me again for the second one.
Well, it's because you can't get any other guests.
I get the best timings on these, right? Both on my columns and on the Block Live.
You get to double.
So I'll start with the overall headline significance, and then we can talk about some of the payment stuff, which is what I find more interesting, especially on like a longer term perspective. But just kind of like jumping in and not really to mince words, but I mean, I think this confirmation, like you said, we've been talking about this. I think CoinDesk actually originally reported some of these at the time, not rumors, but said that PayPal is really getting close. We reported things in that realm as well, but just the fact that it's now official that PayPal is offering crypto buy, sell, hold in the coming weeks through PayPal legacy asset, and then into Venmo sometime in the first half of 2021, and then also allowing merchants to, without even thinking about it, be able to accept, the cryptocurrencies that they're offering at the time, is, in my view, and I don't think it's I think it's the consensus view, but it's definitely the biggest development in crypto in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And that really is actually saying something when you just consider all the other developments that we've dealt with within financial services and payment developments and just activity from legacy financial services into digital assets. But this one definitely takes the cake in my view. And it really, like, even beyond that, I really don't care, I guess, where you sit on the maximalism scale. People will say, oh, you can't withdraw or deposit. This isn't a real service. It's just another crypto IOU offering. It's not really yours. Like you mentioned, it's what Robinhood already has. Why does this move the needle? And this has been said numerous times already, but just like the numbers themselves, 350 million global, the emphasis on global there. Most of the services we talk about with crypto are in the US specifically, but 350 million global active users that if they open up their PayPal app or go to PayPal online, they can now sign up or pre-register to buy crypto. I mean, that's a scale that we haven't seen yet on a global perspective. And then on the flip side, when you talk about payments and merchants and the fact that 26 million merchants can now accept, and you talked about the Morgan Stanley stat where payment acceptance of crypto has been in decline, that kind of takes care of that problem. And so, yeah, I think just kind of stepping back, I mean, to be clear, crypto is yet to have this type of platform and scale to test out the payments use case of using cryptocurrencies or digital currencies as a payment mechanism. And maybe this engagement, maybe the engagement does flop. Maybe there really isn't. Maybe the use case of payments for crypto just doesn't really make sense, right? It's been appreciating ever since Bitcoin came into the picture. Not many people like spending it to begin with. It hasn't really made sense. People, in fact, it's the classic pizza debacle.
Yeah.
And then that's before getting into tax considerations and the fact that, again, yes, no merchant maybe even accepts Bitcoin as payment. I mean, there's like a lot of things that have held back the payments use case that people like to, I think it was more of a narrative in previous cycles, but now is kind of really Bitcoin specifically solidified the store value narrative. But in terms of payments, we've never had a platform and scale to test this use case. My view is probably that people don't want to spend their Bitcoins. I don't think that's going to change now that PayPal is in the picture. But I do think this is just phase one. And I think if you read between the lines, and they actually explicitly say this, that they're working with central banks. They are very engaged in those conversations. And just frankly, they have the interest of going where the puck's going in terms of digital payments. I mean, their entire business is that. And so, yes, it's starting out with Bitcoin, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Ether. But I think it'd be naive to think that this isn't going to extend into CBDCs and stablecoins over time. And so that's going to be quite interesting in terms of testing and being this grand experiment for digital currencies as payments.
Well, regardless of what some of the maximalists and pundits are out there pontificating as it pertains to this news, the market has responded positively. We're up about 8% since the news dropped at around 7:30 a.m. Tuesday morning. So from a market's perspective, people are interpreting this as positive news for Bitcoin and other assets. Litecoin even was up 11% in the aftermath of the news dropping.
Your favorite coin.
My favorite coin. This is not financial advice. I want to tap into the merchant aspect of this. If that happens in 2021, and so folks will be able to then use their crypto to purchase things across these different merchants, millions of merchants. What does that mean for them? Does it help drive down costs? Should they be excited about this, or is it a nothing burger for them?
It's something that I admittedly want, I want to do more work on this. I want to talk to actual experts on this in terms of merchants that large merchants that have to go through negotiations and specifically negotiate on the interchange and merchant discount rates that they're paying these payment acquirers to use these services and accept payments that are now going to include cryptocurrencies and digital currencies. But my guess is over time, like there was a tweet by someone, and I definitely share the same sentiment. I just don't know the timing on this, but I think the end game or an end game, and it gets talked about a lot in payments, but how do you bypass traditional interchange fee models that the card networks have built one of the world's best duopolies around?
Yeah,
Visa and MasterCard, they
that's
make
the question. And it's also,
billions of dollars off of fees,
well,
transaction fees.
it's what you've named your
My
amazing.
column's called the interchange. It gets super meta.
So does this could this translate into a potentiality in which, you know, merchants don't have to pay those hefty interchange fees to Visa, MasterCard by paying or rather accepting digital assets?
Right. So it's something that I think got brought up when Libra first came into the picture, which not surprisingly also is now where Bitcoin is. Like Bitcoin responded to that announcement quite similarly. And I guess we're now at price levels not seen since that event. So I think that's kind of interesting. But when Libra came around, one of the views within payments was, could this threaten interchange models? I think we even had analysts ask, like JP Morgan and like Citibank and other banks that have massive consumer banking businesses that with massive card books, like could this impact the whole interchange model? And I think it's still just way too early for that to actually be the case. And I think these rates that merchants have negotiated, if they're large enough to even be at the table to negotiate, are just like something that they've wanted to get rid of now for decades and just have never been able to. The only thing that's really impacted rates have been regulations to this point, not technology advancements. But that's not to say that I don't think that something like a stablecoin world could eventually lead to pressuring these fees that merchants pay. But it's just, that's still a long ways out. But I definitely think that's something that it's going to be a narrative that I want to start talking about with payments experts is what would it take to get that world to exist? Mm-hmm. And I think we just need to see a proliferation of not only consumers using, it's the classic like chicken and egg problem with payments markets, two-sided market. Not only do the merchants need to accept the payment that you're using, but the users need to, the consumers that are paying with it need to be widely using it, or no one's going to come to the table to accept that form of payment. So now that PayPal now kind of checks that box, and we've seen a proliferation and growth in stablecoin on-chain transaction volume, which a number I like to throw out a lot is on-chain transaction volume for stablecoins at large in 2020 is about to surpass the total volume that PayPal had in 2019, payment volume. So, and yes, the use case on currently paying with stablecoins on-chain is likely for trading or speculating or interacting with DeFi and leverage and other speculative use cases. But it's still a payment flow, and it's something that payment companies definitely are keeping an eye on. We even saw the CEO of Visa earlier this year come out and give his own stamp of approval and state that he believes, he didn't call them stablecoins, but effectively stablecoins are this new emerging payment technology. So it's definitely something that everyone's watching, and I think it's more of an emergent trend that people in payments need to be more aware of.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the L word, Libra, and the last time we were at these price levels was when Libra came out and made the announcement of the network they were hoping to launch sometime this year. We still don't have a launch date on the horizon. People have told me internally at the operation that they were looking for October, looks more like November. Other people say it's probably not going to happen this year. In terms of significance, if Libra were to launch what they had sort of gate crashed the crypto industry with, I guess it was last summer, right? Feels like so much longer ago. Is that more significant, or is this PayPal news more significant in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think not lost on anyone, right? I mean, PayPal was in the original Libra consortium. They left shortly thereafter, and now they're absolutely building their own thing. Whether that becomes stable coins, I mean, I think the fair assumption, and you hear a lot of people talking on this front, is that they're going to be looking at either supporting or building their own, who knows. But stepping back from that, I just think we saw the blowback that happened globally from Facebook's announcement. I mean, PayPal's not going to see that blowback because they already own digital payments globally.
Well, they're not reinventing the wheel, right?
No, they're not framing it as money. It's a payment mechanism. It's a way to innovate on payments, which is what the narrative and messaging that Libra is now
trying to
slowly back to. But I think even just kind of like stepping back, I think in getting into what is PayPal and the significance of what they're trying to do here, I think just thinking what PayPal represents, right? Like not only from human capital standpoint and historically, I mean, everyone knows about the PayPal mafia. You have Musk, who technically founded the company. We debated on that. Thiel, Lev Shan. I mean, beyond that, this company not only like exemplifies, they were fintech before fintech existed, like early 2000s IPO, have been around now for 20 years doing digital payments. Like if some company is going to be trusted globally to do something like this, it's PayPal. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I think it's night and day difference between what Facebook was trying to do, expand competency outside their core competency. Obviously there's an interest for them to want to get into payments, but I mean, PayPal is payments globally. Yeah. So
yeah, I think that speaks to something that you've been looking at very closely, which is the movement of fintech firms into the crypto market. I think you've been keeping a running timeline that dates back to when 2018 maybe. You have Robinhood obviously getting in, SoFi getting in, all these different fintech providers, and I think it was our friend, well, not just our friend, also our sponsor. I didn't even mean to make this plug, but Brad at eToro tweeted the other day that crypto has become in fintech a Me Too feature. When does this sort of value get lost, right? When does when are we at a point where, all right, is this really going to add value if everyone else is doing it?
Right. Well, and it works both ways. It's like, well, why don't you offer this? It's like almost like table stakes at this point, especially if you're targeting a specific demographic that is more inclined to purchase crypto, like millennials and younger folks, I guess Gen Z. But I don't know. I think we talk about this a lot, like between ourselves. I mean, like there was a report that came out. I want to say it's Zabo. They do like APIs for crypto exchanges, wallets, and protocols. But they released a report, and basically their findings kind of confirmed what we've been talking about. But any fintech in the past few years that implemented crypto purchase capabilities outperformed their peers, not only in terms of valuation, but user acquisition. And so we see this obviously with Cash App very publicly. They have said multiple times on earnings calls that their Bitcoin active users generate 2 to 3 times as much money annually than traditional Cash App users. And we've obviously seen the headline sales that they've generated. And we know that it's really, when you back out the cost to acquire, really not that much money. I think 17 million was their gross profit last quarter. But so it's not really like about generating money, but it's really more of a user acquisition tool. It's a way to appeal to a certain demographic that you want to own and continue to retain throughout their life cycle. So the younger demographic, and that's kind of what makes them so valuable. So it really is this wedge into that demographic. And so if you're a fintech that doesn't have these capabilities, the real question from investors, and if you're a public company, now that PayPal is offering it, is what are you waiting for? And I think that's going to be a question that a lot of teams now have to scramble and answer. And we haven't talked about this yet. I don't know how much time we have, but one of, I think, the more underrated things that are getting tossed aside is what a win for Paxos on this deal.
Yeah.
Like, start of the year, I had no idea that they were going to even be offering or be able to offer something like this for companies that wanted to get into crypto. And now they've, in effectively like 4 months, they like own currently this business line. Like they landed the Revolut US crypto offering this summer, followed that up with PayPal. And now if I'm a fintech that's looking to make this as easy as possible, they don't want to build this in-house. They're going to want to reach out, find a third party to partner and handle all the operational back-end infrastructure costs. I mean, they see Paxos is on both of these deals. Why not call them up? So I think it's an absolutely huge win for Paxos. And on the flip side, and I don't know if this is a hot take or not, when I ask people about this, like it kind of gets brushed aside. But I feel like it's kind of a missed opportunity for some companies like Coinbase that are looking for diversified revenue and new business lines, especially into a potential IPO. So
Yeah.
I feel like Paxos isn't getting enough credit really for what they've been able to accomplish in the past few months.
We'll have Chad on the Scoop podcast. We'll bring you back on as a co-host to unpack how they got this deal done and how they got other deals done, and what they're looking to do in the future to expand that business line, which is Paxos crypto brokerage. I kind of want to wrap things up, but there's something that you hinted at, which was the growth of Cash App and how much money they're making from those clients. And it makes perfect sense when you look at what PayPal's doing, given that backdrop, because of the arms race, if you will, between Venmo and Cash App, right? Like anything that one does that the other one isn't doing, they need to get on board with it as a way to either keep customers on the platform or bring on more customers as they expand. And it almost seems like a no-brainer that this, it almost seems silly that it didn't happen earlier.
Right. Well, I actually found this out. It shows you when I got into crypto, but apparently PayPal, and Dan Tony sent this to me, but PayPal offered merchant acceptance of Bitcoin in like 2014, but no one used it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely something. I mean, like from an analyst perspective that, has covered the names Square and PayPal, 2 years worth of the CEO, Jack Dorsey, really harping on just the power of Bitcoin for the business and how that's a core monetization strategy and all this stuff. I mean, like that's the same investor base that are investing in both those companies. So it makes a lot of sense that PayPal was getting some questioning as to why or when they're going to have their own Bitcoin or crypto strategy. And then I think...
No matter when.
Yeah, wait, what?
Only a matter of when.
Exactly. And I think one last point I want to make, I mean, Cash App is great. I love it. We all use it. But I think getting into more of like the significance of this to kind of like tie this all together, while Cash App does offer, deposits and withdrawals and is a completely open from that perspective and interacting with Bitcoin protocol, it is also they only have roughly 30 million monthly actives. And that's still, an order of magnitude away from how many actives. I don't think they're monthly, but 350 million is a lot larger than 30 million. So that's just why the significance now. And I think just PayPal in general is just needed to work a little bit slower from that perspective. I mean, there's a lot of global considerations, but it's exciting.
Very exciting indeed. Mr. Ryan Todd, thanks so much for coming on the show. Second time in a row. Maybe we'll have you on next week. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back with you next week to explore this wild world of digital assets and cryptocurrency. Let us know what you think of the show, topics you might want us to explore. And again, as always, thank you to eToro US for sponsoring. Take it easy.